So today I'm going to explain why Philippine mythology is so confusing and hopefully clear up a couple misconceptions and common mistakes I see people make. Let's get started. Humans appeared in Africa about 200,000 years ago and migrated to Southeast Asia approximately 50,000 years ago. There were many migration routes from Africa to Southeast Asia, and along the way, the Homo sapiens interbred with other species like Neanderthals, Denisovans, and Homo erectus. It is theorized the first inhabitants to arrive in the Philippine area were the Negrito, who may represent an early split-off from the first Africans who migrated along the southern coastal route. They brought with them basic forms of animism, where everything is animated by a spirit. Austronesians arrived around 5,000 years ago, migrating from Taiwan through the Philippines, and over the next 3,500 years reached as far as Easter Island and Madagascar. This migration brought with them more complex animist beliefs in shamanism, ancestor worship, totemism, tattooing, and benevolent and malevolent spirits. The next significant influence came from Hinduism, which began around 3000 BCE and spread through trade, reaching Southeast Asia around 200 BCE. Trade routes and the continuing migration cycles of the Austronesian expansion brought Indianized influences to the Philippine area. It introduced epics, folk stories, and started evolving the existing animist beliefs into more complex polytheistic religions. But the most enduring legacy was the introduction to the concept of demons. In Hinduism, they are called Rakshasa. These demons were most often depicted as ugly, fierce-looking, enormous creatures with two fangs protruding from the top of their mouth and having sharp, claw-like fingers. They are shown as being mean, insatiable cannibals that could smell the scent of human flesh. Generally, they could fly, vanish, and had magical powers of illusion, which enabled them to change size at will and assume the form of any creature. This is why the Indianized areas have common mythical malevolent beings and spirits, while other areas don't. The single biggest mistake made by people who research Philippine mythology is the assumption that the Spanish introduced the concept of demons. We will get to the cultural damage that the Spanish caused in a moment, but they did not introduce demons to the Philippines. Unless, of course, you are also blaming the Spanish for the malevolent demonic spirits and creatures in areas they never colonized, like Japan, China, Cambodia, Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia. One thing these areas share, besides malevolent creatures, is that their animist beliefs and subsequent religions were greatly influenced by Hinduism. These creatures are a regional phenomenon, not a Spanish invention. That said, in the Philippines, Hinduism did not replace animist beliefs but were absorbed into it. It was also in these regions where we saw the introduction of gender-variant deities and priests. The concept of deities and demons appearing in human and animal form also became very prevalent. Next, the areas of the Philippines actively involved in Chinese trade are worth mentioning for one reason. Chinese mythology and folklore is famous for its ghosts and the influences those stories had on Southeast Asia. This is why the Sinified areas of the Philippines have visually different appearances for common creatures as well as stronger belief in ghosts. Islamic traders arrived in the southern Philippines sometime in the late 13th century. At the time, the inhabitants who lived there were in small autonomous communities, and unlike the Visayan and Tagalog region, hadn't evolved their beliefs to include multiple communities, so the indigenous populations were quickly converted to Islam. When the Spanish arrived, they found some of the inhabitants were receptive to Christianity, but many required it to be imposed by brutally removing shamans from power, burning idols, and creating harsh public notices and punishments for anyone who didn't conform. They effectively replaced the polytheistic deities with a monotheistic one. On top of this, biblical stories and ideals were incorporated into creation and origin myths as well as existing folklore. As Catholicism became the dominant religion in the region, to the frustration of the Spanish, none of their teachings could address the inherent animist beliefs in malevolent beings and spirits. This frustration appears countless times in the Spanish documents. What the Spanish were able to do is change the thinking about the historical cultural identity of the people. If the Spanish had any influence on myth and folklore, it was teaching people that they were stupid for believing in these things. This thinking was enforced by the education system set up by the Americans and the continuing rush to westernize the Philippines, forgetting that these mythical beings actually served a very important social function, and in many areas they still do. I often get asked why there are so many different deities and creatures in Philippine mythology, and the answer is that there really aren't. If we break the Philippines into ethnic regions, knowing the influences, it becomes much easier to map. Philippine mythology is a confusing term because there is very little outside the Austronesian expansion that you can apply to the entire Philippines. Each region had their own language, environmental influences, and societal needs. so it really needs to be looked at region by region. The biggest misunderstandings happen when specific aspects are dismissed or applied throughout Philippine mythology. Thanks for watching, guys. If you want to learn more about Philippine mythology and folklore, subscribe to our channel and check out our blog.